Well, hey, CR Youth, so happy to be with you tonight. If we've never met before, my name's Joelle. I'm one of the pastors here. I want to say a big hello to everyone watching over at Egan. I want to say hi to everybody watching from Hastings tonight. And I want to say hi to all of our youth students at Cottage Grove and Woodbury. It is going to be such a fun time, the next 20 minutes or so that we have together. And I want to start by asking you a very important question. Have you ever had any doubts about God? Like, have you ever wondered if he's even real? Or have you ever had any questions about whether he loves you or whether or not you can trust him? If you have ever had any doubts about God, then you're just like the rest of the world, because every single one of us have had tons of doubts and questions about God. I want to get into that with you tonight. I want to talk about how do we deal with the doubts and the questions that we have about God. But before I get to that, I want to deal with something else that I think many of us, probably all of us, have wondered about in our childhoods. A question that I think we've all had kind of underlying that we need to have answered. And the question is, do our stuffed animals come alive at night? Well, last one here. I'm not really sure what this even is. Okay, when you were a kid, you had stuffed animals, I'm guessing. Maybe you still have them. And our stuffed animals are so important to us. We carry them around and we confide in them and we cry into them. Maybe this is just me. Okay, but people feel close to their stuffed animals. And we've wondered, I think most of us have wondered, do these stuffed animals have a life at night where they come alive? And this issue comes up for most of us whenever we see the movie Toy Story. If you've ever seen this movie, you know it's like this wonderful world where the toys come alive at night. So I have to ask you, don't answer this out loud, but have you ever just tried to sneak a peek at your stuffed animals at night? You know, you pretended to be asleep and then you opened one eye just to see if they happen to be coming alive. I definitely did this. I actually spoke to my stuffed animals during the daytime and I let them know, it's okay. Your secret will be safe with me. You can just go ahead and talk back to me right now, and I won't tell anyone. But no matter how many times I said that to my stuffed animals, I never got to be a part of their nighttime adventures. I know this might seem very weird to some of you because you never thought of this ever in your life. Maybe you never even saw Toy Story, but my weirdness does have a point. And here's what my point is. When something really matters to you, you want to test it to see if it's as important as you think it is. So let me give you a couple of other examples that maybe are a little more relevant to your life. Like with a sports team. Let's say you make a team and you get onto the team and you're practicing and it's going really well. You like your teammates, the team is gelling, it seems like you're a good team. What do you want to do? You want to play against another team so that you can see, is this legit? And is this team really good? So you want to test it to see if it has the value that you thought it had. This is also true with our pets. If any of you have a pet, and then your friends come over and you like the pet, and your friends come over and you introduce your dog or your cat or whatever to your friends, you want your friends to like your pet. In fact, if your pet does any tricks, you probably show off those tricks to your friends because you're testing, this dog or cat is really valuable to me, and you're kind of seeing if your friend also thinks that that animal is really valuable as well. Here's one more. We do this sometimes in our relationships. So if you ever get involved with somebody in a romantic relationship or maybe even in just a close friendship, you want them to pass some loyalty tests. And this can happen really simply in your relationship with them. Maybe somebody makes fun of you and they defend you, or maybe you don't have lunch and they share their lunch with you. That's them passing tests and building the relationship. But maybe even more seriously, you're dating somebody and maybe, you're dating some guy and another girl starts to text him and he shows you the text and he shows you that he's responding to her I have a girlfriend, don't text me. That's him passing a loyalty test. And that builds the relationship. So whenever we have something we value, we often want to test it to make sure that it has the value that we thought that it had. That's true in relationships, it's true with pets, it's true with sports, it's true with stuffed animals. So it shouldn't surprise us that that's also true when it comes to our relationship with God. If you have a faith in God, or if you even have like a curiosity about God right now, you would probably love it if he would pass a few tests for you to prove that he loves you, to prove that he's trustworthy, or maybe even just to prove that he exists at all. And in this teaching series that we're in right now, we've been studying this guy named Gideon. His story is found in the book of Judges, in the Old Testament. And Gideon is just a human being like you and me. And so he has doubts and questions about God as well. And in the part of the story of Gideon's life that we're going to pick up tonight, what's happening is he is testing God. He is trying to find out if God is legit. He's trying to figure out if God is real, if he loves him, if he's going to come through for him. And here's what's happening. Gideon is about to fight another army. And God has given him 300 guys in his army, but he has to fight an army that has thousands of men. And God has told him he's going to have victory over this other army, but he's not sure. So he's got to test God to see if God is going to come through for him. So what we're going to do is at all of your campuses, we are going to read together Judges chapter 6, verses 36 to 40. And then after you read it, then we'll come back together. So go ahead and read it now. Okay, great job, you guys, reading the story of Gideon testing God. Now, what is he doing here? He has laid out 2 tests for God. He's laying out this basically like a fleece blanket, okay? It's actually just more like a piece of wool, sheep's wool. And he's laying it out, and he's like, okay, God, if you're going to come through for me, what I need you to do is make this wool wet and the ground dry. And what does God do for him? Well, he just responds, and he makes that wool full of dew. In fact, so full of dew that he has to squeeze it out. There's like a whole bucket full of water that's left afterwards. And that is incredible. And to me, that should have been enough for Gideon. Like, okay, you tested God. He came through for you. Now you know he's with you and he's for you. I mean, if your stuffed animals talk to you one time at night, you would believe forever, right? That they had a whole, like, alive at night thing going on. But one test is not enough for Gideon. So he asks God to complete a second test. Now, before I talk about the second test, I want to stop here and I want to say this really important truth to you. And that's this. It is okay if you need more from God. I think sometimes we think that we are supposed to just put our faith in God, and then our faith is 100% in God, fully, for every day until we die. But the truth is that our faith grows, and it grows just like anything else. Like it has good days and it has bad days. Sometimes our faith dips. Sometimes we have questions. Sometimes we have doubts. Sometimes we struggle to maintain our faith in God. And that's normal. And it's also okay with God. He isn't bothered at all by your doubts or your questions or your curiosity or even your tests. One of my very favorite things about God is that he never changes. He's always faithful. He's always good. He always loves you. He always comes through. And that doesn't change even if you have questions or you have doubts about him. So as you struggle, you can be sure that he isn't struggling. As you doubt, he is just there for you through it all, faithful and strong and dependable and constant. That's who God is, and that's who he is always going to be. So if you just need a little more from God right now, that is absolutely okay. That's how Gideon felt. He needed a little bit more from God, and so he tests him a second time. And let's pick it up and read this again together. Then Gideon said to God, "Please don't be angry with me, but let me make one more request. Let me use the fleece for one more test. This time, let the fleece remain dry while the ground around it is wet with dew." Okay, So he recognizes this might be a little bit annoying, and he's like, okay, God, could I just do another test, and we'll just do the reverse of what I said before, and this time you'll make the fleece, the wool cloth dry, and you'll make the ground wet. Is that going to be okay? And what does God do? Well, he comes through. Look what happens next. So that night, God did as Gideon asked. The fleece was dry in the morning, but the ground was covered with dew. Why did God do that? Why did God come through for Gideon with a completely second test? I think he did it because he knew that's what Gideon needed in that moment. I mean, he knew this is scary and it is difficult to fight this army of thousands with only 300 guys. So he needed reassurance, and God understood that. And so he gave the reassurance to Gideon that he so desperately needed. He understood his doubts. He understood his concerns, and he wanted to come through for Gideon. And this is true for us as well. God is always patient with our faith process. He understands that we are just going through it when it comes to our faith. And sometimes our faith is going to be strong, and sometimes we just need him to reveal himself to us in a special way so that we can move forward in faith. Now, I want to show you this little timeline here. This is actually a timeline of your life, okay? If we could put your name right here, we'd put it right here. And this timeline is just like, okay, here you're born, and then you have markers all throughout your life. So like in here, you were probably like potty trained, and you learned to walk, you learned to ride a bike. Eventually you learn to drive. Some of you know how to drive. Eventually you get your first job. Maybe you had your first job first. Maybe you'll get married, but along the way in our life journey, we have kind of markers, okay? Now I want to show you another timeline. And this timeline is your faith journey, because just like we have a journey in our regular life, we also have a journey when it comes to our faith. And we have markers in that journey just like we do in our regular life. So it's not drive and first job and get married. It's things like this. We all have curiosity about faith at some point in our life. We all have questions about faith at some point in our life. Eventually we get to a point where we hear about Jesus, how he loves us, how he died for us, how he rose from the dead, and we make a decision at that point. Do we want to place our faith in him? Many of us make a faith commitment to Jesus, and then we start growing in our faith. And that's how our faith journey looks. Now, when it comes to God, what you should know is that he understands that you're somewhere on this journey. You're probably the only one who knows exactly where you are on this journey. And wherever you are on the journey, God is there for you, and he's okay with it. He is walking with you in your faith journey no matter where you are, and he is patient with you, and he is kind to you, and he is faithful to you as you make steps forward in your faith. Now, even knowing that God is fine with wherever you're at in your faith journey, and he understands that you sometimes need to test him or question him or doubt him, I'm guessing you still have one more question that you want answered when it comes to this Gideon story. And the question is this: should we put God through tests like Gideon did? Should we all go home tonight and put a blanket out and see if God will make it wet and the ground dry tomorrow morning? Well, I don't think so, actually. I don't think it's actually very wise for us to put God to tests like that. I think that God can handle our tests, but I actually think it's better if we just go through our natural tests of life with God. Here's another way that I would say it. A relationship grows best through natural tests. So let me just explain that to you. Like, if you're in a friendship with somebody, you're going to go through natural loyalty tests. And as you do, someone makes fun of you and they stand up for you. As you go through those tests, the relationship gets stronger and you get to know them better. But if you say to your friend, I'm going to test you now, that might actually cause some tension in the relationship. It's probably not the best way to get to know them and their character and to find out if you want to grow more in your friendship with them. And the same thing is kind of true in our relationship with God. Although he can handle any of our tests that we throw his way, it's much, much better for us to just put our energy and effort into knowing him, who he is, and how he feels about us. And then as the tests of our life come along, we put our trust in him, and he comes through for us time after time after time, instead of putting fleece outside at night. Here's a way that the wise King Solomon said it. He said, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. Solomon's telling us that we should trust God with our heart, that we should lean on him instead of our own understanding. He's saying, as things happen in your life, trust God and then watch how he passes those tests, because he is going to pass them time after time after time. I want to close with a really quick story about something that happened to me where God really came through. About 8 years ago, I came down with a really severe illness. The doctors said that it wasn't treatable and that it was progressive. In other words, it was just going to keep getting worse for my whole life. I wasn't able to do things that normal people can do. I couldn't walk my dog. I couldn't have dinner with my family. I spent most of my time in bed. And that summer, I realized that my daughter was going to be going to preschool in the fall. My daughter's name is Hannah. And she was going to have Fridays off, and I would be home on Fridays with her. But I wasn't strong enough to take care of her. I was too weak to take care of her. I had no idea how I was going to take care of her on Fridays. I asked God to help me. I would prefer that he would just heal me from the illness, but I said, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do about Hannah on Fridays. And that Sunday I went to church, and I ran into this woman named Lexi. I kind of knew her through somebody else. We're just chatting in the hallway, and she says to me, the weirdest thing happened to me this week, but God let me know that I'm supposed to serve somebody else on Fridays this fall. I have it off of work, and God wants me to help someone. And I couldn't believe she was saying that to me. I literally said, the person that you're supposed to help is me. And I explained the situation to her, and then every Friday for the rest of my illness, Lexi and Jackson, her little son, came over to our house, took care of Hannah, unloaded the dishwasher, took care of household things while I just laid in bed hoping to get better. Now here's why I'm telling you this story. Obviously, God came through and eventually healed me because I'm here tonight. But along the way, what he did is he cared for each need as I faced it. So when I had a Friday problem and I brought it to him and he came through for me on Friday, Sunday through Thursday got a lot easier for me to trust him. Do you get this? So it's like as the tests came, I brought them to God and he came through for me. So what he didn't do was heal me miraculously the minute I asked him. Slowly over time and throughout the illness, I learned to trust him more. You see how that would strengthen my relationship with him even more? And it absolutely did. And so I have to ask you, like, what test are you facing right now in your life that you wish God would come through for you? You don't have to test him like Gideon did, but you can certainly bring whatever it is that you have for him right before him today and ask him to come through for you, because God is faithful and he is. I'm going to pray for you, and then I'm going to pass it back off to the youth leaders at your campus, and they're going to tell you a little bit more. Let me pray. God, thank you so much for the truth that you always come through for us. Maybe it's not in a way that we exactly asked for, but you have been faithful forever, and you keep being faithful to us. So we're grateful for that. Help us to learn to trust you more. In Jesus' name, amen.